The Philadelphia Flyers won the Stanley Cup in 1975, and since then, they've been the most cursed team in hockey. Despite having the third best winning percentage in hockey history, they've lost 6 straight Cup finals since 1975. Multiple franchise-defining superstars have had their careers cut short, and the Flyers haven't won the Cup since before Apple was founded. But back in the 1970s, the Flyers were actually really good, and easily the best expansion team since the original 6. They won back-to-back Cups in 1974 and 75, but in 1976, Reggie Leach had one of the best performances of all time in a playoff run, setting the goal record for a single playoff run with 19 goals. That performance was so good that he won the Conn Smythe, despite running into the dynasty Montreal Canadiens, who beat the Flyers in 4 games. Connor McDavid in 2024 is the first non-goalie to win a Conn Smythe in a losing effort since Reggie Leach in 1976. It's a pretty dismal feeling, but it can't be as bad as the feeling that linesman Leon Stickle had after admitting he blew the call on an offside, which led to the Islanders scoring a goal in a game where they won the Cup over the Flyers in 1980. Bob Nystrom scored the game-winning goal in overtime of Game 6 of the finals that year, but before the game even went to overtime, the Flyers were up 2-1, and Clark Gillies from the Islanders was obviously offside. So much so that everyone on the ice, except for 2 Islanders players, stopped playing hockey assuming the offside was called. The linesman didn't call it. The Islanders scored a gimme goal, which Flyers captain Mel Bridgman said changed the momentum of the game. They lost that game in overtime in what was the start of the Islanders dynasty, but Tim Kerr wishes he could have gotten to a Game 6 of the finals and hadn't been dealing with a career of injury issues. Did you know that Tim Kerr has the most power play goals in a season in NHL history? He did it despite being injured throughout his entire prime, as he revolutionized what you can do on a power play. Planting yourself in front of the net makes you a 24/7 target for defenses, allowing you to screen the goalie and allows you to be first to every rebound. On a power play, it's especially effective because you're functionally taking away another defenseman out of the game just to deal with you. Hall of Famer Brian Trottier once joked that the only way to stop Kerr was to wrap chains around his arms and legs, but Trottier immediately retracted that statement by saying that probably still couldn't stop him. Tim Kerr was 6'3", 225 pounds, and if it wasn't for his injury history, which includes a broken leg, career-long knee issues, a septic meningitis, more knee injuries, and a shoulder injury which needed 5 surgeries over the course of 18 months, Tim Kerr could have had one of the best goal-scoring careers in NHL history, along with a cup or two in either 1985 or 1987, when Philadelphia played the dynasty Edmonton Oilers in the Cup Finals. When Philadelphia finally managed to build on another strong contender for the Cup, they ran into prime Wayne Gretzky and his teammates on what is considered the best team of all time. The Flyers had one of the best teams to never win a Stanley Cup when they ran into the same Oilers team in 1987. Both times they didn't have Tim Kerr, and in 1986 they had 2 of the 3 best defensive seasons ever according to modern analytics, and they were on the same pairing, Brian McCrimmon and Mark Howe. Tim Kerr and Brian Propp were 2 of the top 10 offensive players in the league that year. Ron Hextall won the Vezina and Conn Smythe in 1987 in his rookie season. Despite all of that, they never won the Cup with this core, which is probably why in 1991, when they had the chance to trade for the most generational prospect hockey had seen since Mario Lemieux, they took that chance. They gave up probably the biggest trade package in NHL history to Quebec, who moved to Colorado a year later, for Eric Lindros, a trade package which sent Colorado up for a dynasty of their own, winning multiple Stanley Cups. Philadelphia, however, managed to make a team around Eric Lindros, who was filling into his role nicely as the future face of the league. By the mid-1990s, this team was one of the strongest in the NHL, and their identity was as true as ever: punch your face in and score 100 goals. At just 21 years old, Lindros was the league MVP and won the scoring race, making it to the 3rd round and losing in 6 games to the eventual Cup-winning New Jersey Devils. They lost to the Miracle Run Panthers in 1996, and in 1997 they had the best chance to win the Cup since the 70s. They gassed their way to the Cup Finals with prime Lindros, losing just 3 games in 3 rounds. Unfortunately, they ran into arguably the other best team of all time in the 97 Detroit Red Wings, who matched the best defenseman of all time, Nicholas Lidstrom, against Eric Lindros, basically sapping him of his powers. Detroit swept Philadelphia, and the Flyers lost their 5th Cup final in 22 years. That was Philadelphia's last chance at a Cup with Lindros, because after that season, Lindros wasn't able to play a full season of hockey, getting injured in 3 straight years leading up to 2000 after he had a collapsed lung which almost killed him in 1999. He got 3 concussions in the 99-2000 season, including one of them in a Game 7 against New Jersey, which Philadelphia lost. New Jersey went on to win the Cup, and Lindros missed over a year dealing with his concussions. The Lindros era in Philadelphia is over, but it's not the end of the turmoil turmoil as 2000 was a terrible year for everyone in Philadelphia. Longtime broadcaster Gene Hart passed away, and then a couple days later, defenseman Dmitry Tertizhny passed away in a boating accident. In February of that season, head coach Roger Nielsen was diagnosed with bone cancer, and before that, fan favorite Rob Brindamore was traded to Carolina. So when Lindros had the life-changing third concussion in one calendar year that postseason, it signified the end of the most cursed era of the team. But when it comes to draft decisions, nothing has been more unfortunate than 2007, when Philadelphia had the worst record in hockey and were expected to get the next great American prospect, Patrick Kane. With only 22 wins on the season, Philadelphia was terrible and in dire need of a superstar. Unfortunately, Chicago, a team with 15 more points in the standings than the Flyers, won the lottery and leapfrogged Philadelphia to get Patrick Kane. The Flyers got JVR that year, which was a decent consolation prize, but by 2010, both Chicago and Philadelphia had drastically rebuilt and were in the finals facing off. Chicago's superstar was 21-year-old Patrick Kane, who scored the game-winning goal in overtime, defeating Philadelphia in Philadelphia, while the fans weren't even given the courtesy of knowing that the game was over. Had Philadelphia kept their spot in the 2007 draft, the 2010 finals probably look a lot different, but that is Cup Finals number 6 that they've lost since '75. Despite not getting Patrick Kane, their core looked pretty good with Mike Richards, the closest Selke loser in the awards history, and Claude Giroux, a young rival to Sidney Crosby. Unfortunately, after their star veteran defenseman Chris Pronger broke his hand in 2011, the team wasn't able to make much noise and lost to the Cup-winning Bruins in round 2. Throughout the 2010s, the Flyers were never really able to make much noise, and the young promising core had been fumbled and poorly timed against dominant Rangers, Capitals, and Penguins that were in their division. But after barely missing the playoffs in 2017, their luck turned by winning the second overall pick a decade after their last second overall pick, JVR. They managed to grab Nolan Patrick, one of the best prospects in hockey, to pair with their superstar goaltending prospect Carter Hart, and all of a sudden the Flyers had one of the most exciting cores in the league. Unfortunately for Philadelphia, Nolan Patrick had a similar outcome to Eric Lindros, suffering severe concussion issues which prevented him from ever becoming a significant NHL player, ultimately retiring just 5 years after being drafted. Carter Hart, the future of the franchise, was supposedly involved in the 2018 World Junior scandal and has been removed from the NHL after being formally charged with sexual assault. Without Nolan Patrick and Carter Hart carrying the team, the Flyers have never been able to make this era anything more than just a waiting period, and since 2017, Philadelphia has been in purgatory. That brings us to today, where the Philadelphia Flyers lost their way on the development path after the recent crop of prospects didn't turn out. The Flyers are irrelevant, or, well, they would have been irrelevant if it wasn't for what might be the biggest break in franchise history. They managed to draft Matvei Mishkov 7th overall last season. This player has so much talent and was such a highly touted prospect that he would have rivaled Connor Bedard for 1st overall last season if he didn't have question marks about if he was going to come over or not, or if he was just going to stay in Russia. Well, he made his decision, and he formally signed with the Flyers, and he's going to make his debut this fall. He's broken Nikita Kucherov and Alex Ovechkin's records in the Russian development and professional leagues, and he might be the best player outside of the NHL right now, and he's only 19 years old. Apart from Mishkov though, this team is a no man's land. It just doesn't have the aura it used to have. They aren't winning the cup this year. They're not talented enough, simple as that. They do, however, have one of the best structures in the league and one of the most persistent coaches in hockey, John Tortorella. How this team will move going forward, that's to be seen. The Flyers have one of the best cultures of winning in hockey history. The Flyers have had some of the biggest stars in hockey history. The Flyers have had some of the best moments in hockey history. And they're entering year number 50 without a Stanley Cup due to bad calls, bad timing, and bad injury luck. They've got a sick mascot though.